Hi, I'm Sam Baker and welcome to The Shift, the podcast that aims to tell the no-holds-barred truth about being a woman post-40.
Anyone that's worried about turning 40, I say hurry up and get here. This is where the party is. This is the good place.
Created and hosted by me, journalist and author Sam Baker. I started The Shift because I was so tired of the absence of older women's voices.
3 little injections around my eyes and suddenly I was like, oh, I just got the last year back. I'm not trying to look 30. I just want to look 42.
Where had all the women over 40 gone?
You know, nobody ever gets addicted to kale. You get addicted to things that kill you.
So I created The Shift to make a space to talk about everything from life, love, sex, to careers, confidence, mental health, menopause.
So, I mean, seriously, if you want to walk about in your pyjamas for the rest of your life, we're invisible.
Each episode I speak to an inspiring woman about her shift, the second half of our lives.
I feel very strong and think I genuinely don't care what anybody thinks of me. And that does come with age.
Join me every Tuesday, wherever you listen to your podcasts.
If you have had a baby or have mum friends, you will likely have heard of someone taking their baby to see an osteopath. This week, I'm joined by Laura Tilson, an experienced and registered osteopath working in London, and a wonderful human who supported my journey with Alfie.
Because a lot of parents have never held a baby before they have their own. They're learning so quickly how to maneuver this very, very precious person in their lives.
And like you say, it's that educational piece. So you were so beautiful with Alfie and like, I'm doing this and this is why and this is what's happening in his body.
You need someone really who does this day in, day out and knows babies and really has a good network of people to refer to as well.
Hello, I'm Pip and welcome to the Midwife Pip podcast, the home of expert information and real chats on all things pregnancy, birth and beyond. If you have had a baby or have mum friends, you will likely have heard of someone taking their baby to see an osteopath. And in some countries, it's now pretty commonplace. So what's the deal with it? Why are babies having osteopathic treatment and is it necessary? This week, I'm joined by Laura Tilson, an experienced and registered osteopath working in London, and a wonderful human who supported my journey with Alfie and opened my eyes to the world of osteopathic treatments. So welcome, Laura. It's lovely to see you again.
I know. Thank you so much, Pip, for having me on this podcast. Hopefully I can shed some light onto what osteopathy is, because it's still quite misunderstood, I think.
I completely agree. And I really, really felt that. I remember the first time I took Alfie to see an osteopath who originally wasn't yourself. And my husband was literally like, we're doing what, Pip? Like, why? Where's the evidence for this? What are we doing? It was like, this is the most bizarre thing ever. But for me, I suppose personally, Laura, as you know, I was in a place of desperation, wasn't I? I was like, I'll try anything to help things. But it really opened my eyes into the space. So I'm really excited to kind of share some of that knowledge and spread some of that information so that other parents can make the informed choice that I eventually got to, but definitely wasn't kind of grounded in to start with. But the first thing I wanted to touch on with you in particular, Laura, is that you specialise in mums and babies. Talk to me about why you chose that.
Yes. So this was definitely my vocation. I absolutely love it. I still can't believe I'm lucky enough to work in that field of healthcare. I just, the embryology that I study, the pregnancy physiology that I study, all the new science that's emerging about the neurology of women's brains changing in pregnancy, and the hormone research that's out there at the moment, it's a lifelong passion for me. And I just find it really, really interesting. And the politics of women's healthcare as well, I think is really fascinating. Plus, I absolutely love babies and love being around them and treating them and making them feel more comfortable.
I mean, I can firsthand say that you're clearly in the right job because, yeah, you were an incredible piece of our puzzle. And actually, I think of you all the time. That sounds weird, but let me put it into context because I've got that picture of you holding Alfie in that
Oh,
position where he looks like a little Buddha baby
yeah.
to
Looks
help
so
him with releasing wind. And we still use that position all the time. So especially in the night when he's been flat for a while and he still struggles with his little gut and wind, we use that all the time. And I always think, oh, just do Laura's little movement. So you are absolutely changing women and babies' lives. So you're definitely in the right space.
I often see new parents staring at me, moving their babies into different positions and different handholds, and they look, you can see them just going, oh my gosh, because a lot of parents have never held a baby before they have their own, and they've got, so they're learning so quickly how to maneuver this very, very precious person in their lives. And so part of my job is showing them how they can move their babies and give their babies that opportunity to move and be in different positions, because movement is so key, isn't it, to our health?
Yeah, and actually understanding, and this is one of the things that you do so beautifully in your practice, is actually understanding your baby's anatomy and why those positions help. And I think that's like the connecting the dots that clicks in my brain is not just like do this, but actually why we're doing this and that underpinning understanding, which parents just deserve, don't they? Like that's just
Yeah.
empowerment of being a parent and understanding your child.
Yeah, I love showing parents pictures of the esophagus and the stomach and where it sits in their hands so that they can help elongate and alter their baby's posture to help them birth and help them get into positions, like you said, of winding and promoting gut health and things like that.
Oh, it's amazing. Now, one of the things I've got to ask you, because I feel like this crops up everywhere when you start exploring babies and kind of osteopaths, cranial osteopathy. What is that? What does it mean?
Yeah. So yeah, I think people always say to me, "Oh, are you a cranial osteopath?" And I would say I'm an osteopath first and foremost. That's our profession. That's the umbrella term for the model of healthcare that we use in practice. And under that umbrella are various different styles of treatment. So some osteopaths will be very structural in their approach, doing lots of massage and joint manipulation or mobilization and stretching. And some osteopaths will use really, really gentle pressure points and movement, which we term cranial osteopathy, to help create change in a body. And there's a whole spectrum between. There's visceral osteopathy, which is amazing after pregnancy when all your visceral organs, your abdominal organs have been moved out of position and pushed out of their normal position. And there are lots of different ways of palpating the body.
My brand new book, Midwife Pip's Guide to a Positive Birth, is now available. So much more than a book, this is a guide that allows me to hold your hand through your birth preparation journey. With over a decade of experience and knowledge packed in to ensure you really are empowered in the way you deserve to achieve a positive birth, regardless of the twists and turns that crop up. Make sure that you get your hands on Midwife Pip's Guide to a Positive Birth book now and are empowered to have the birth experience that you deserve.
Palpating the musculoskeletal system and the soft tissues, and then trying to create change in the body. And that is what cranial osteopathy is, one of those treatment methods.
That makes sense, and probably makes sense why cranial osteopathy tends to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, tends to be what we see associated with treating babies.
Yes, exactly, because it's very, very gentle and very safe for babies to move them in that really gentle touch way into positions of comfort. So there are no forceful movements. There's no huge stretches and joint mobilization. It's really, really gentle and it moves with the body. So babies tend to love it.
Yeah, and I think that's an important message, actually, isn't it? Because I think, and certainly when I was first sort of recommended you should take him to an osteopath, and I kind of thought like sports massage. And like when I have a sports massage, because there's like tension in my body, it's quite aggressive and forceful. And and there's a lot of pressure. And that's why I think you think, oh, I don't want my baby manipulated in that way. But as you've just said, it's absolutely not that at all. And sometimes, and I guess it's probably part of your art, is it almost looks like you're not doing very much at all in a way.
Yeah, it can look a little bit mysterious. I think I think that is quite often where the issue lies with my profession and my field of healthcare, because um, it does look like we're doing very little. What I love to do with parents is show them the asymmetries in their baby's movements and their baby's posturing before the treatment. I do the treatment and then I show them afterwards how they can move and the difference. If they see the difference, they understand it a lot better. They know that I've actually done something.
And like you say, it's that educational piece. So you were so beautiful with Alfie and like, I'm doing this and this is why, and this is what's happening in his body. And then it's like, oh, the clogs start turning. You become part of that appointment rather than like a bystander. I feel like you really bring the parents into that space and kind of empower them with that knowledge and tools and techniques to support their baby as well, which is just, I think, a beautiful way of practicing in this space and in healthcare, but so often does get neglected. So I'm certainly very grateful to you in doing what you do. Now, talk to me, Laura, about why a baby might benefit from seeing an osteopath, from having this kind of therapy.
So, most parents will come into the clinic because their baby is struggling with feeding or sleeping. They're really unsettled. They're having problems opening their bowels, that sort of thing, gas. And as osteopaths, we would look at that through the lens of the musculoskeletal system. So we know that in the womb, babies can be very bunched up. They could be in a breech position. Their pelvis might engage in mum's pelvis. There could be a lot of forces put through those soft tissues of the baby's body before they're even born. Then you have the birth, which might be a C-section, it might be a vaginal delivery. There may be interventions like forceps and ventouse involved. And that again puts further strains on the baby's body, even in the sort of optimal position through with the baby in the OP position with the chin tucked in the most narrow part of the baby's head, engaged in the pelvis. We know that the bones, the cranial bones overlap, they compress, there are fontanelles, and the baby's body is designed to move and react to those strains and tensions from birth. But sometimes the baby isn't in that position. Sometimes there is intervention, and that can cause soft tissue injury, and we call it body tension patterns, and we can then go on to treat that and help them unwind from that and recover from that.
A quick pause here because I want to share a super important health tip from Nutricia, the sponsor of this week's episode. The first 1,000 days of your child's life, which is the 9 months of pregnancy and up to their second birthday, provide an incredible opportunity to support their gut health, which has a profound impact on all sorts of short and long-term health outcomes. Which means, as a pregnant or new mum listener, you are in an incredible time of opportunity. So here is a top tip. When introducing foods to your little one, ensure to include high fibre options. In the Western world, most don't eat enough fibre and fibre-based foods. These are a firm favourite of your gut microbiome. Making sure each snack and meal has a good dose of fibre will positively influence infant gut health. Legumes, whole grains, crushed or ground nuts, fruits and vegetables are all great fibre sources. So making sure you have a mixture of these. Gut health matters for so many physical, developmental and psychological health outcomes for our children. So here is to us helping them on their way to healthier, happier futures. And I think what you were just saying now took me back, Laura, to when I saw you in your clinic and And I guess, for backstory, I had seen an osteopath prior to seeing Laura who thought there was nothing wrong with Alfie. And as a mum, you know what it's like. You have that instinct, don't you? And I was like, no, I've got more questions. Something doesn't quite feel right. And then I was recommended the wonderful Laura. So I was like, right, I need to see someone that is come with trust from kind of recommendations. And you were asking me questions that I hadn't linked the dots up myself, but you sort of mentioned that was Alfie quite low in my pelvis? And I was like, oh yeah, like so low from the beginning. In fact, he was born with his ear bent in half. And you were like, wow, that's a red flag, isn't it? That clearly he was in some kind of asymmetrical position. But I really associated osteopaths being perhaps more necessary with what I would term like a more traumatic physical birth for a baby. So the likes of, forceps or shoulder dystocia or prolonged pushing. And we were none of that. We had a really beautiful, calm, lovely, straightforward water birth. But actually, like you rightly identified, he had oral restriction. You identified a lip tie that we hadn't spotted. And then you were like, well, all of this, the way that he was positioned in the pelvis actually is really significant. And then obviously meningitis and all the drama that came with that. But actually, it made so much sense hearing you kind of unpick our journey and not just looking at what was in front of you, but actually what had got to that stage and actually understanding each individual. And I think that's so powerful in the care of mums and babies, because we just aren't all the same, are we? Like our journeys are not generic. And I love the fact that for you, part of your treatment pathway, and I think this is, for me, would be kind of almost a bit of a red flag if this wasn't something that practitioners were doing, having had an experience with yourself, Laura, is really understanding everything that's led up to that day and the reason for that appointment.
Yeah. It's sort of the layers, and it's just looking at it through a different lens. Pip, you're a midwife, so you hospital with hospital learnings, and this is a different approach. This is just looking at the body and looking at care, and it works alongside orthodox medicine and orthodox medical practices and policies. And it just might be the bit of the puzzle that is missing for a lot of mums. Not all babies will need it, and also, the compressions and the soft tissue tensions that babies experience in the womb and birth are normal, and babies tend to stretch out of that over the first 6 to 8 weeks. But some babies don't. Some babies have other health issues that come along, which means that their immune systems and their bodies have to tackle other things, and they don't get to do those processes and move through those stages. And that can, and as osteopaths, we then think that can have an impact on their general health.
Definitely. I guess it's a bit like in terms of how mums recover. I always talk about diastasis recti from a pelvic health perspective, in that some women, it just goes and it's like, oh, great, 6 weeks later, there's no diastasis or a minimal functional diastasis. Whereas for others, actually, there is work that needs to be done to help rehabilitate that. And I guess, is that kind of similar? That's how it works in my brain?
Yeah, really similar. And we do that in clinic as well. We offer postnatal checks for mums because, again, there is that gap in that offering, isn't there, from GPs or within the NHS, that you have to be referred for pelvic health physiotherapy within the NHS. And actually, we can do a full assessment head to toe of all the structures in the body that are put under strain during pregnancy and might need a little bit of support afterwards to knit everything back together and reestablish those connections, heal any sort of soft tissue injuries, that sort of thing. So I think that's a really lovely offering as well as osteopaths.
Definitely. Mums and babies matter. And I feel like we need more support to thrive and not just like survive and accept bare minimal at this time in our lives. Now, one of the things that I guess I would love to have this out there as a bit of a resource, Laura, to kind of signpost people to, because when it comes to selecting an osteopath, now, if you're local to London or are willing to travel to London like I did, see Laura in her clinic, and that's linked in the episode description. And I mean that, in no way, affiliated or promoting Laura. I genuinely went to her service for support and she was incredible. However, if London is 6 hours away from you, or, you need to find someone local to you, how do people go about finding an osteopath that is going to be an expert in their baby?
Yeah. So if you're looking to see an osteopath for your baby, you really need somebody who has that postgraduate training in pediatric osteopathy. So that's one thing you should ask for when you ring up your local osteopath. You need someone really who does this day in, day out and knows babies. um, and really has a good network of people to refer to as well, because we work with a lot of midwives, a lot of lactation consultants, tongue-tie practitioners, and so we if you're known by other professionals, I think that's also a really good sign. And then also reach out to your community, so your WhatsApp groups or your Facebook groups or whoever's local, and ask, who shall I see with my baby? Because word of mouth among mums is really important, isn't it?
So important. And I think that's really great advice. And so is it okay that if a parent finds a local osteopath and they look great, online or wherever, can they just phone the clinic and just
Yes.
ask a little bit more about their experience and their credentials? Is that an okay thing to do?
I think we just say, this is my issue. Is this something that you guys deal with a lot? And you'll know straight away from their answer whether they do or not.
Definitely. And yeah, like you say, if you've got word of mouth, then that's just golden, isn't it? It is golden. So asking, and often it's, it might be asking at like local breastfeeding cafes or your local health visiting team, like other professionals that may have had to signpost to these services, kind of getting a feel about what's around. So important. I definitely didn't have that level of understanding about the differences in osteopathic treatment, and actually someone that isn't just a generalist but actually is more specialist in babies, and how important that was. And it was night and day between those appointments with a specialist and not. So
we're a really small profession, and you do have to really want to go and do that postgraduate training and specialize in that field as an osteopath. So yeah, you have to sort of hunt us out. And also, people don't really know about it until they've had their baby, do they?
Yes,
there's
true.
a whole world that appears once you've had your baby that you had no idea about, and then you're like, oh.
And often once you've had your baby and there's a problem, because if everything's gone smoothly, then you may never look to explore anything extra. So it's often, once you're in that, and actually in a really vulnerable place. And that's definitely where I found myself, once you're in that really vulnerable place and you're then trying to find someone. So in the same way that I speak to expectant mums about finding a really great lactation consultant locally and things like that, actually, perhaps we need to add a pediatric osteopath to that list as well. So you're not then searching for that professional in that sleep deprivation and that vulnerable stage. You know where you're going to go if there is a problem.
Yeah, most lactation consultants will know the local osteopath that does work in that field, I think, because we work so closely together for feeding issues. And a lot of the training in lactation, the CPD courses are now talking about body work and getting that treatment as part of improving feeding mechanics and things.
They're so linked. I feel like we need to do a whole nother episode on that, actually, Laura. We'll have to put that in because they're so interlinked, aren't they? And so misunderstood. So everyone that comes on the podcast, I always ask for 3 top tips, Laura. And I feel like I've just given one in terms of find somebody good and local in your pregnancy. But what would be your 3 top tips to new or expectant parents listening to us?
So as an osteopath, and again, looking through my lens of the musculoskeletal system, my first top tip is think about how you can incorporate movement for you and your baby. Movement is really key to our general health. Do something that you really enjoy, because it's so hard, isn't it, when you have a baby to get to a class or so find something that works for you and your baby that's really easy and that you enjoy doing, and do it regularly, even just small amounts. Then my second one is a sort of psychological one to help with that transition of matrescence or whatever you want to call it into motherhood. I think for me, it was really helpful to know that each phase, however dark, however difficult, was a phase.
Yeah.
And you found that with Alfie as well. Second time round, you just repeating that mantra, and it's a phase.
Especially at 2 a.m.
Phases, you can wake up the next day and it's gone, right?
Yeah.
It could be a day, it could be a month, but it is a phase.
And I think that's so much harder to appreciate once you've already had one child. So I know my first, I was like, this isn't a phase. This is my life forever. I'm never going to sleep again. Life's always going to be really hard. But once you've got that lived experience, it is easier.
It's that what has happened to my life.
Yeah.
And then my third one is from a social side, find your tribe, whether that is a walking group or an exercise class or a baby music class. There are amazing women's circles out there that you can join. And just, we know there's research now, amazing research about cortisol levels dropping and oxytocin levels being boosted for females. It's a very female-centric piece. We need other women in our lives, whether it's one very close female relationship or a group. So important through those early weeks, isn't it, to have that support from other mums.
Absolutely. That Me Too mantra of just knowing you're not alone is so, so powerful. Laura, thank you so much. Thank you for joining me on the podcast, but equally thank you for all the work that you're doing to support mums and babies who really, really need it at such an important time. You're an absolute star.
Thank you, Pip. Thanks so much for having me.
Before I head off, I need to tell you something. 68% of you who listen to my show have not hit the subscribe button. So can you do me a favour? And if you've ever enjoyed listening, hit subscribe now. It makes a huge difference, helping me to keep bringing you episodes. And together, we can then reach and empower more women on this journey. If you are a pregnant or newly postpartum listener and are looking to have the healthiest, most positive and informed journey, then my exclusive Your Pregnancy and Your Postnatal Journey courses may be for you. I work with a select number of women in a bespoke way with unlimited access to me and my expert team for the most transformative level of support at this important time in your life. We only get one shot at getting this time right. So to get in touch and find out more, head to midwifepip.com.